So, let's see. Do I know everybody? I'm not sure if I've ever met Soda Gnome before. Have you ever been to any of my things here at the Buddhist Center, Soda Gnome? I'm really bad with names as it is, but I think a name like that I'd probably remember. So. Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yes, it's quite an interesting name. And an interesting avatar as well. I always like when people come in all kinds of different avatars. And there are rules. The Buddhist Center does have kind of rules about it. But I remember when I first started doing these talks, almost 2 years ago, people would come. There would be like dragons laying off to the side and all these creatures and stuff. And I always thought that was really neat because it what it reminded me of was that the Dhamma was for all beings, right? The Buddha talks about all the beings and all the world systems and all the universes. So the Buddha knew about all of these beings, and there was no I should say attachment, or there was no saying, oh, these beings are not human, or these beings are not even from Earth. All beings in all the world systems be ever happy. So I always liked it when I saw that we would have all these creatures and stuff like that. So let's see. So welcome. I think Jim and Magiel, I believe you guys have been here before, and Tara and Atropia. So I do know everybody. That's good. I'll skip the introductions. What I haven't done in quite a while was a question and answer period. Every once in a while when there was not a lot of people that came, or when I didn't have a topic, I would just say, let's do a question and answer. And we haven't done that in a while, so I wanted to see if anybody was interested in that. I do have a backup topic of Dhamma that I can talk about if nobody has any questions. But one of the things I like about question and answer is it gets all of us talking. I'm certainly no master or guru, and I'm not gonna. The first time that I was able to speak, listen to Bhante G. Bhante G is the monk who I will hopefully be ordaining under as a monk myself in the next couple of years. The first time I saw this elderly, wise monk give a talk, he said, and in the questions afterwards, he goes, "You can ask whatever question you like, but I can't guarantee an answer." So I was like, well, you know what? If this wise old man, this wise old monk can't guarantee an answer, I sure as heck can't either, can I? But if there is an answer, I like to at least kind of help people steer them in the right direction. So does anybody have any questions regarding Buddhism or a topic they'd like to discuss? You guys, those of you who come and hear my talks, you know that I do like it not just be me yammering on for 40 minutes, but I like us to talk as well, because that's how we learn. The great thing about Buddhism is that yes, you learn from a teacher, but the teacher learns from the students. Everybody learns from each other. Everybody has something to teach. The importance of mental awareness in one's own self. In what way, Bina, mental awareness, one's own self? I mean, just going off the basics of that, that's really what the practice is about. You are, when you do that, samatha and vipassana. Samatha being the insight, the concentration meditation, and vipassana being the insight. You are you are gaining insight into your mind and body. Right? Everything that you know of the universe is this mind and body. So when you take the time to learn to observe it and to see it at a deeper, ever deepening levels, then you are knowing, you are understanding the universe itself. You are understanding your mind, and you are coming to know it. So that is, that is the point. That's what that mental awareness, is that huge part of that practice. That's why we have we have actually 2 of the 8-fold paths, right? The last 2, right mindfulness and right concentration. Buffy, in terms of my talks, I obviously I come from a Theravada lens, so a lot of what I say and what I know does kind of come through that Theravada lens. But when we're talking about the basics, when we're talking about life in general, a lot of times the type of tradition doesn't make all that much of a difference. The teaching is very similar in that regard. So that's why you might be able to hear me talk, and it might sound something like from Zen. And I also enjoy learning from the different traditions as well. I do heavily learn from Theravada, but there's there's a lay teacher that I like. He's actually the Noah Levine. He is the person who wrote a book called Dharma Punks. He's an interesting character. He was like a punk rocker and a criminal and stuff like that, and he became, he started to meditate, and he became a Dhamma teacher. He's been a Dhamma teacher for about 20 years. And then there's a Tibetan monk that I like, that I listen to. I think he's a monk. Sometimes the different names in the Tibetan tradition kind of confuse me as to what the levels of monkhood they have, but I'm pretty sure he's a monk. So there's it's good to learn from the different traditions. All religions offer the same experience at core. I don't know. I mean, I think that almost all religions do have an aspect of mindfulness, of meditation. Christian, there's meditation, Muslim meditation, Jewish meditation. There are different. Perhaps the goals are different as to why you do that meditation, and the practices are different. But there is, every religious tradition does have that exactly a contemplative tradition in that religion. So there is and I was listening to, was it a talk? Maybe it was in that basics, the Buddhism and modern psychology course, and he was talking about how a lot of the, no. I'm trying to remember. I watch so much Dhamma talks and just watch so many things that it kind of mixes up. But somebody was talking about how the different traditions going through the same meditative experiences and explaining them differently. Like a Christian would say, maybe a jhana. Oh, it was Ajahn Brahm. That's right. A jhana might be like if a Christian reached a jhana, they can talk call it union with God or something like that. So there's definitely a crossover of contemplative traditions between all of the, especially in a Muslim, they have the Sufis. The Sufis are, actually, I knew about the Sufis pretty much about the same time I learned about Buddhist monks. The Sufis are very, very wise, very contemplative as well. So. Bernard, did you have anything more to say about the Eightfold Path of the awareness? Need a clarification of what I said or anything like that? Not that I said much, but... Okay, so any other questions or any topics in Buddhism or Buddhist related, or even Buddhism in the modern world, and anything that you'd like to discuss? Maybe regarding your practice, maybe regarding Buddhist news, maybe regarding those Tibetan Buddhist breakdancing. You ever see that? Did you see that video? The Buddhist monks doing a break dance. One of the if you know the old band, it's a band from my childhood. What the heck is it? What are they called? I can't remember them. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, yeah, that's right. The Beastie Boys. Apparently, one of the Beastie Boys was a Buddhist. And I guess he just died recently or whatever, so they had this thing. And there's this video of these three Buddhist monks doing breakdancing of the Tibetan tradition. Yes. Well, I don't know about they said unclean. Is that what they said? What tradition is that? Well, I mean, as somebody who knows his anthropology, the whole purity thing is common in cultures. But from what I know of the the Vinaya, the monks' rules, I have read it multiple times. Though I don't have it memorized, but the reason, as far as I know, at least. Again, coming from the Theravada tradition, the reason why you don't monks don't touch, or nobody can touch a monk, is not because people are unclean. I mean, again, different traditions are different. Cultural additions are added to these things. So there might be one of the traditions in one of the cultures, one of the countries that is part of it. But in the Vinaya, the monks' rules, it's for a lot of different reasons. The monks' rules were created. Actually, the Buddha didn't just say, okay, here's 227 rules for the monks. The way the monks' rules were created is actually a long, funny story. Basically, the monks, as the monks screwed up and did crazy things, the Buddha made a rule about it. Like, there's these monks, going and sleeping with women and enticing women and doing all these things, and so he makes a rule. And so that's where monks are not allowed to be in an enclosed space with with an opposite gender. So same thing, for the female monks as well. You can't be in an enclosed space with a person alone of the opposite gender. The touching is to basically what you want to do is you want to have the monks there should be no question that the monks are following the vow of chastity and following the teachings of the Buddha. And so when you have monks touching people or monks being in closed rooms with women and all these things, then people talk, right? And so it's really also so that it helps the monk stay aloof. Monks are not really supposed to have friends per se. You're not supposed to be, I'm best friends with this monk or that monk. Monks are supposed to be on the renunciate path. There's there's even some traditions within Theravada where they say, technically your mom is a woman. Technically, once you become a monk, your mom is not really able to even hug you. Now, depending on the traditions, that's either kept very strong or it's not kept. It's not really. But the main thing is that a monk is not supposed to have any contact with a woman with unclean thoughts in his mind. Now, if a woman's, if the monastery is burning down and there's a woman that's trapped and the monk has to, pick her up and bring her out, he's not breaking the rules. That's a different story. As a matter of fact, my favorite monk, Ajahn Brahm, that actually happened to him, where he had to kind of save a woman and pick her up and bring her out. So that's it's really about the mind. It's about the mind, and it's about making sure that there is not an inch of doubt in a person's mind that a monk is pure, that that he is following, rightly practicing. Unclean, basically, I'll break out some of my anthropology training and my love of culture. In many cultures, the whole menstruation cycle is considered unclean. There are, in tribal cultures, and it even a version of this even stemmed into when we got out of these tribal cultures. But in tribal cultures, there's such a thing as the menstruation hut. And so when a woman was going through her cycle, she would stay in this hut. She was unclean. And especially like the priests and the Brahmins, the leaders were, the leaders had to stay away, because having any contact with something that's unclean can ruin the rituals and all these kind of things. So the menstruation cycle, which is also interesting because these cultures were also highly worshipping of the gods that give birth, that allow us to have good births and to have kids and for them not to die and all these kind of things. So it's kind of while they worship the fertility gods, that's what the word I was trying to find, the fertility gods, they also have this unclean thing where they're like, well, yeah, no, you're gonna go in your hut over there. So that's kind of that's where the whole unclean thing really comes from. It stems from way back, thousands and thousands of years, as we started having these aspects of culture developing. So that's why I'm saying I don't know if it is that, if it's part of a culture, or that's in the Vinaya or whatever. But again, the rules that I talked about, so that men don't have to worry about touching women or being alone with women. Again, it's the same thing with the female monks. The same rules, not being alone with a lay man, not touching a lay man. That's why when you go to a monastery, the traditional way of kind of greeting or paying respect to the monks is the folding your hands together and doing a little bow. That's the traditional way of paying respects. Now, of course, actually, like Sri Lanka and Thailand, people will actually do like the full, like literal bow all the way to the floor, kind of thing. But that's not really something. There's nothing in Buddhism that says you have to bow to anybody. It's really just a matter of respect. A monk won't take offense that you don't bow to him, or if he does, he's not a rightly practicing monk. That's not something that they're not going to be like, oh, he walked past me and he didn't bow. Oh no. Nope. Not going to happen. So I think that's an interesting thing. I think about that as when I become a monk, it's going to be very awkward for that to have people bowing to me. But the great thing about the reason why you bow, actually, you're not bowing to the person. The thing about when you become a monk, you are a symbol. Your robe is the symbol of the Sangha. Your robe is the symbol of that unbroken 2,600 years of those, of female and male monastics practicing rightly. In Sri Lanka, they have these fans, and when the monks give the 5 precepts or anything like that, they'll actually put the fan in front of their face, because it's not supposed to have anything to do with the monk. The specific monk giving you the precepts. It has to do with just that it is a monk. So you're paying respects more to the ideal of what being a monk should be, as much or more, or at least as much as the actual monk themselves. I can talk a lot about monastic stuff because it's interesting to me. I mean, obviously, if it's something that I'd like to devote my life to, it's got to be interesting. I couldn't imagine wanting to be a monk and having no interest in it. Sounds like some kind of version of hell. So, I'm just going to check if I missed any questions or comments. No, I didn't miss anything. So we're about a half hour in. At this point, if we have any comments or questions, we can continue to talk. Otherwise, we can end for the night. The Hindu-Buddhist connection, that's an interesting one. There's a Hindu-Buddhist connection in as much as there is a Jewish-Christian connection with Jesus, right? Jesus was a Jew, Buddha was a Hindu, or there's no such it wasn't really called Hinduism back then. And it was really Vedanism, the Vedas, the Brahmanism, which is kind of like an early beginning of Hinduism. So there's definitely a connection. If you read the suttas, this is the world that this Buddha was born into, right? So all of the analogies that he makes, all of the stories that he tells, are connected to that world. You don't teach the Dhamma to somebody, and this is why in modern times teachers who are able to bring the Dhamma to us, that we understand it in our modern terms, are very important, just like it was back then. Being able to, when the Dhamma spread, when all the monks started going out to all the different cultures and across the Asia, they had to know how to talk to all of the different traditions and the different cultures, right? I mean, there was a world of difference between India and ancient China at the time. I mean, today we think India and China, that's like they're right next to each other. But 3,000 years ago, right next to each other was still a long way away. And the culture between the two were extremely different. So, it takes that ability to be able to teach the Dhamma to your audience, and the Buddha was a master at that. That's why they say the suttas are not they're not a blanket teaching for everybody. Every sutta, every teaching that the Buddha does in the suttas, he is giving to somebody specifically. They say, a lot of them, he's talking to the monks. And so as a layperson, you might say, well, I mean, I understand the value of that, but, I'm not going to be a monk. So, where are the parts where he's talking to the lay people about how they should live? And he does that as well. He talks to kings about how you rightly rule. All right? He talks to the Brahmins. He talks to all of these people in his world of India, northern India, 2,600 years ago, are the people who he's talking to, are the people who he is trying to explain what this thing called Dhamma is, what this thing that he found is. So there is a very strong connection in that regard. There's also, Buddhism has a couple different things to thank for being included, and that come from earlier traditions. The first thing being karma. Karma is not Buddhist. Karma existed before Buddhism. Reincarnation, rebirth existed before Buddhism. These are all parts of the culture that the Buddha was born into. The word Dhamma or Dharma existed before Buddhism. It was a very, very highly used word back then. So all of these aspects of that culture found its way into Buddhism. And of course this makes it, this is one of the arguments that a lot of secular Buddhists say, like, rebirth and karma were just stuff that was part of the culture then, and that's what the Buddha used. You can take it or leave it. I don't necessarily agree with that 100%, but logically it makes sense. If you look at it from an anthropological point of view, an archaeological point of view. So that's a good lesson in understanding what the Buddha taught, is understanding who he taught it to in the context of the culture that he lived in. And it's the same thing with Jesus. Jesus, in the Bible, the parables, the similes that Jesus uses, all, connected to his world where he was living in at the time. That's what a teacher does. I've noticed that myself in terms of when I talk to people about Buddhism. I use, similes and experiences from my own life. Like how viewing the mind is like watching a kid trying to sneak a cookie out of the cookie jar. I came up with that because I was that kid sneaking food all the time. So it made it made sense to me. So you grow up in that world. you understand. People understand your simile. I'm not sure, Jim. I don't know enough about that to make a comment, to be honest with you. So I don't know the time period of the Bhagavad Gita. I know a lot of what was in it is extremely ancient, but I don't know like when it was put together and all that stuff. My knowledge on Hinduism is actually pretty lacking to that regard. Zen is pretty rigid too. Zen, man, they got the guys that come around with the rulers to make sure you're sitting, your back is straight and all these things. I kind of like that. I always thought that was interesting. And they whack you with the rulers. I was like, oh, you know what? That's pretty interesting. I need to go to a Zen temple and get my my posture going straight. Posture is extremely important. It really is. I mean, it's a major issue for us Westerners. But to be able to get into those jhanas, those deep states, you need to be able to basically sit there with no issues for an hour, 2 hours, and it's tough for that to happen. I struggle with this every time. As a matter of fact, it's funny how I've been sitting I would say the last couple of months, I've been sitting in a chair to meditate in the morning. And I feel like I've actually started to move towards a deeper levels of calm and meditation, because I'm not worrying about, my legs and falling asleep, or is my back straight, is all of these things that are underlying my issues with sitting meditation disappear, because I don't have to worry about them. And so then the only thing that's left is calm and peace. And the more calm you have, the more peace you have, the deeper your levels of meditation go. People talk about meditation as something that you attain, something that you strive for, but it's really striving to let go. Now, people feel like they are a failure, or that you're not supposed to sit in a chair and meditate. But actually, the Buddha taught meditation and mindfulness in the 4 postures: standing, walking, or sitting, lying down, or whenever awake. One should develop this mindfulness. So no matter what posture you're in, the Buddha talked about it to the monks. He talks about while eating, while sweeping, while going to the bathroom, maintaining your mindfulness in everything you do all day. That's a heck of a lot of work. If you go to a retreat, you try to do that, it's tough. It's tough.